Hi, welcome to Movies Moment. Today we are going to explain a movie called Kill Her Goats. Spoilers ahead. Subscribe if you like this and catch us on the next one. Take care.
One night, a couple are camping in the woods when a masked man appears with a chainsaw in his hands and decides to attack them. After tearing down the tent, the man uses the tool to destroy the couple's bodies and, while her boyfriend is hit in the abdomen, Tandy tries to escape, but because of her injuries she can't get up. After eliminating Conwell Buckleby, the man in the goat mask goes after the woman and realizes that she has a wound in her throat. Instead of eliminating her quickly, the guy decides to attack his victim even more and pulls her head up while looking at the sea of blood. A few seconds after falling to the ground, Tandy lost her life due to the deep wounds and the amount of blood lost. Earlier that day, Reese and Missy are on the beach celebrating the fact that Audra Buckleby is coming home. A few years ago, Audra left Cape Cod to study in the capital. However, now that she has graduated from college, her father has bought her a house as a gift and her friends are excited to have her in town again. That afternoon, Audra arrives in town and goes straight to the Tup House, a property her father bought for her shortly before she returned to Cape Cod. After removing the for sale sign, the young woman takes the keys from the car and enters the house. She then decides to open a bottle of wine to celebrate the start of this new phase in her life. At this point, she decides to call her father to inform him that she has arrived in the city, but Conwell doesn't pick up. So Audra decides to leave a voice message. While walking through the kitchen, the young woman accidentally spills her drink on the floor and quickly grabs a cloth to clean up the mess. She then walks up to the bedroom and is enchanted by the beautiful view of the lake from the property. After exploring every corner of the house, Audra decides to go downstairs and run into the garden. Excited, she skips down to the pier and looks out at the water, which she will encounter every morning from now on. Before returning to the house, Audra grabs some more bags from the car and, while unlocking the door, she is observed by a masked intruder who waits for the moment when the young woman is distracted to attack her. After being knocked down, Audra picks up a rock to strike her opponent, but is interrupted by Reese's arrival. At that moment, the young woman realizes that the person she is about to eliminate is Missy and manages to stop the attack in time. After receiving a warm welcome from her best friends, Audra asks the pair to take the bags inside while she goes to collect her suitcases. When she enters the house, the young woman breaks the wine glass she forgot on the kitchen floor and Reese immediately offers to clean up the mess while her friend goes to take a shower. A few minutes later, when it's getting dark, Audra is absent-mindedly washing her hair when, suddenly, Missy enters the bathroom and the girl gets quite a fright. At this point, Missy says that she went over to get another glass of wine for her friend, but Audra knocked the drink over again. Soon after, Reese shows up and offers to help Audra clean up the mess while Missy goes to take a shower in the bathroom on the second floor. While putting on her clothes, Audra talks to Reese and reveals that her father only bought that house for her to try and keep her in the city, so he can see her more often. However, the young woman wants to return to the capital after the summer, because life in the countryside doesn't suit her. The good news is that, now that she has her own house, Audra plans to visit Cape Cod more often and Reese reveals that she was surprised when she heard that her friend was moving into the Tup House. The place is very famous among the town's residents, who tell bizarre stories about the people who live there. According to Reese, the members of the Tup family went mad and some of them were eliminated in that house. Since then, the place has become haunted. While Missy showers, her friends go into the kitchen to prepare some snacks and Reese reveals that she's a little afraid of spending the night in that house. To make her friend even more terrified, Audra suggests that they watch a horror movie. Minutes later, Missy appears in the living room, but when she finds out what her friends are watching, she decides to go to sleep, as she is terrified of horror movies. After saying goodnight to the girls, Missy grabs a glass of wine and goes to her room. While she's getting ready for bed, she hears some noises coming from the closet and, instead of checking to see if there's anything in there, she just says her prayer and goes to bed. At this point, Reese and Audra are already terrified of the movie and are startled when the phone starts ringing. After almost having a heart attack, Reese decides to go to bed, as she feels she has had enough excitement for one night. Disappointed, Audra tries to convince her friend to finish watching the movie, but she says that if she does, she won't be able to sleep that night. When she gets to her room, Reese checks under the bed for mice or insects. As the house has been empty for the last few years, she's afraid of being surprised by one of these creatures during the night. However, when she realizes that there are no animals around, Reese manages to relax and lights the fireplace to warm up the room. After taking off her clothes, the young woman lies down on the bed and, meanwhile, Audra continues watching the movie while drinking her 1000th glass of wine. During her sleep, Missy dreams that she is in a cemetery at night and a fog prevents her from seeing the exit. Unnoticed by the young woman, a masked man approaches her, but when Missy looks back, he disappears. After watching the movie, Audra falls asleep on the sofa. In the middle of the night, she gets up to put on a sweatshirt and then returns to the sofa. Suddenly, the young woman looks out of the window and realizes that the for sale sign has been put back on her lawn and decides to go out and take it down again. After throwing the sign to the ground, Audra runs back home and runs into Reese. Hearing someone opening the door, the girl wakes up and decides to go and check that Audra is all right. When she realizes that her friend has just gone for a walk, Reese decides to go back to her room and asks Audra to lock all the doors before she goes to sleep. After finishing off all the bottles of wine, the girl decides to have a couple of shots of another drink and goes back to the sofa. A few minutes later, Reese wakes up to the sensation of someone licking her feet and decides to go into the living room to find her friend. The young woman claims that Audra's dog has licked her feet, but when she hears this, she says she doesn't have any pets. Hearing this, Reese begins to suspect that someone has broken into the house and runs to the kitchen to get a cleaver while Audra grabs the knife she was using to cut the cheese. Immediately, the two start walking around the house looking for the intruder and, after searching every corner, they decide to pay a visit to Missy's room, but the girl claims she was asleep the whole time. Furious at being woken up during the night, Missy closes the door and goes back to bed. When she returns to the kitchen, Reese tries to understand what happened and Audra says that the sensation must have been caused by a nightmare. Still convinced that the sensation of someone licking her feet was real, Reese decides to call the police, but realizes that her cell phone is missing. At this point, she asks Audra to call the emergency services, but when the young woman goes to look in her bag, she realizes that her cell phone has also disappeared. Upon hearing this, Reese feels even more convinced that there is an intruder in the house and suddenly they both hear a bottle falling in the kitchen. When they see paw prints right next to the spilled liquid, the pair become even more curious to find out what's going on and Audra decides to get a knife before following the footprints. When they open the door, the girls see a goat running through the kitchen and Reese takes a tumble. Despite the scare, they are relieved when they discover that it is not a person who has broken into the house and try to find out how that goat managed to get in. While they think about the various possibilities, a man in a goat mask emerges from the kitchen with a chainsaw in his hands and begins to chase them. During the escape, Audra ends up falling to the ground, but Reese returns to help her up and they both run out of the house together. Terrified, they think about getting in the car and driving to the police station, but the keys are in Audra's bag and Missy is asleep on the second floor. Worried about their friend, the girls start shouting in the hope of helping her escape through the window, but Missy is in a deep sleep and can't wake up. After falling asleep, she returned to her nightmare in the cemetery. This time, however, she is captured by a masked woman who tries to drown her in the mud. While Missy struggles in her dream to survive, her friends see a man running away from the house and Audra decides to go inside to look for Missy. Paralyzed with fear, Reese says she won't be able to keep up with her. So Audra asks her friend to wait for her in the garden for 3 minutes. If she doesn't return by the end of this period, Reese must flee and run to the police station for help. As soon as she enters the house, Audra goes to the kitchen to get the car key and then goes up the stairs to her bedroom. However, when she finally manages to open the door, she tries to wake Missy and, when she removes the blanket, the young woman realizes that her friend is already lifeless. Seeing all that blood and the wounds on the girl's body, Audra starts screaming and slowly walks away. Just then, she hears the sound of someone breaking the roof and suddenly the creature appears behind her with a sword. In an attempt to get rid of the young woman, the monster attacks her, but Audra ducks before being hit and ends up rolling down the stairs. During the fall, she hits her head on the wall and faints. By the end of the 3 minutes, Reese is completely terrified and is torn between running for her life or going after her friends. Terrified, she decides to hide in the shed, but ends up coming across another demonic creature, which captures her and drags her into the shed. After terrorizing the young woman with his chainsaw, the monster decides to test a new way of eliminating his victims and hits Reese's body with an iron bar. When she wakes up from her fall, Audra sees the goat head walking towards her and, just as she is about to be eliminated, she manages to knock him out with a kick. The young woman then gets up and runs into the garden, but her enemy manages to catch up with her and strikes her in the back with his sword. Due to the intense pain, Audra falls to the ground and ends up being captured. However, just as the creature is about to eliminate her, the young woman hits its leg with a knife and manages to run to the pier. Seeing her fleeing along the beach, the goat decides to look for a shortcut, because he knows he'll never catch up with the young woman with that wound on his leg. While walking along the sand, he comes across a garage that the locals use to store their boats and begins to suspect that Audra might be hiding inside. As soon as he enters the garage, he begins to search every corner, without even realizing that his victim has set a trap to catch him. When the creature approaches the boat where Audra is hiding, she attacks it and manages to hit it with an oar. The young woman then picks up her knife and starts hitting her enemy until he can no longer resist the attack. Finally, she picks up the sword and uses it to remove the goat's head before even checking who is under that mask. That night, Haley Buckleby arrives at Casa Tup to pay a visit to her sister, who is having a bad day. As well as losing her father a few hours ago, the woman received a divorce petition from her husband while she was still in hospital. Now she has to break the sad news to her younger sister and talks to her best friend on the phone while trying to think of the exact words to say to Audra. Now that their father is gone, Haley and Audra will receive a large fortune as an inheritance. So Brett saw the perfect opportunity to file for divorce and take half of the assets that will go to his wife. Furious, Haley begins to think of a plan for revenge against her husband, but before she can put it into practice, she needs to talk to her sister. At this point, she picks up the phone and calls Audra, because all the lights in the house are off and Haley begins to think that her sister might have gone out. However, during the call, she hears the noise coming from inside the shed and decides to go there. Slowly, the woman walks to the door and decides to enter. At that moment, she finds Reese's body on a bed and panics. But instead of running away, Haley tries to enter the house to look for her sister and realizes that the front door is locked. As the woman looks through the window, a creature approaches her from behind and tries to eliminate her with its chainsaw. At this point, Haley is startled and, thanks to her quick reflexes, she manages to hit him with her bottle. When the animal falls to the ground, she manages to escape. Soon afterwards, however, the stalker gets up and walks around the garden in a daze, looking for his victim. However, when he reaches the back of the house, the man is surprised by an attack from Haley, who uses an axe to hit him several times. Realizing that the goat-headed monster is still alive, the woman continues her attack. However, when she realizes that she is about to eliminate him, Haley decides to remove the goat mask so that he can look the criminal in the eye before finishing him off. At that moment, the woman realizes that this guy is her husband, the same one who eliminated Conwell a few hours ago in order to steal the Buckleby family inheritance. After eliminating his father-in-law, the man went after his sister-in-law and is now trying to attack his own wife. What he didn't expect, however, was that Audra was still alive. Hearing her sister's screams, the young woman approaches with an axe in hand and strikes her brother-in-law. After knocking him out, the girl tries to understand what's going on and Haley reveals that, after filing for divorce, Brett went there to eliminate her in order to get the family inheritance. When she discovers that the man had eliminated her father that night, Audra is furious and directs all her rage into her blows with the aim of eliminating her brother-in-law. The problem is that, despite everything that has happened, Haley is still in love with Brett and orders her sister to leave his body alone. At that moment, the rivalry between the two sisters comes to the surface and they start fighting. Realizing that Audra is completely out of her mind, Haley decides to run away and almost gets hit by the axe. Luckily, the tool ends up stuck in a tree and Haley decides to pick it up so she can defend herself against her younger sister. During the duel, Audra manages to knock her down, but instead of eliminating her, the young woman strikes her sister with the handle of her axe and Haley faints. It's almost done when Devin and Autumn go to the Tup house to pick up the goats they released on the property in order to scare Audra. They are running along the beach when Autumn notices some bloodstains and decides to go there to investigate. On opening the door, the couple come across the body of the goat that tried to eliminate Audra and had its head removed. After seeing that terrifying scene, the couple decide to run away to hide in the forest and suddenly Audra appears. Seeing her ex-boyfriend near her house, she comes to believe that he is involved in the attack and decides to hit him. When she sees Devin being eliminated right in front of her, Autumn starts screaming and runs away before Audra can reach her. During her escape, the young woman runs into the water, but Audra manages to catch her and drags her back to the sand. The woman then strikes Autumn in the face with her own fists and, when the young woman faints, Audra leaves. Just then, she returns home and finds Reese in the shed. When she realizes that her friend is seriously injured and will have no chance of survival, Audra is heartbroken, but decides to finish the job to spare her further suffering. With the help of a pillow, the girl attacks Reese and finishes her off. After putting the sale sign back in the garden, she leaves.